Hi, good evening. We're coming to you live from ThePrint newsroom. The question that we're going to be addressing today is, has the Supreme Court been hasty in concluding the hearing on the sexual harassment allegations against the Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi? With me is my colleague Ritika Jain, and I'm Anisha Bedi. Ritika, of course, has been tracking the case rather closely right from the beginning. And before I go to her, I'd just like to add, in what might be considered or a season or a trend of clean chits, the recent, of course, being the Chief Justice of India himself. This comes a day after the Supreme Court, in a formal press release, cleared the CJI of sexual harassment allegations which were leveled against him by a former Supreme Court employee. However, this in turn has sparked, controversies and public outrage in terms of how perhaps the due process wasn't followed by the institution itself. There were protests that have already erupted, across the country, several being planned. I witnessed one outside the Supreme Court today here in Delhi. In fact, several people, about 55 of them, were detained by the Delhi police here. In fact, just about half an hour ago, they've been finally released. Some of these were even journalists, who were just there to cover the event, were, however, detained by the police. Ritika, you, of course, and yeah, just to tell our viewers out there, please send us your questions in the comments section below or in the chat box for that matter. We will be taking those as we proceed. Ritika, you, of course, have been covering this case right from the beginning. And while it's tough to say whether the allegations are true or not, and I think that's, of course, a matter of trial. But however, I think what's being debated is, has the process been followed or not? And now that he's been formally cleared of these allegations after, I believe, the report was submitted by the 3 judges panel on Sunday, could you give us more insight into that, please?
There are a lot of questions that you've put in here, whether it's true or false, whether it's been fast or slow, whether the process has been followed, not followed. So let's just take this one by one. To start with, a former Supreme Court staffer made public a complaint against the Chief Justice, saying that he sexually harassed her while she was posted at his residence on 19th of April. This was through an affidavit to 22 sitting judges of the Supreme Court. There are, of course, more, but 22 of them received this affidavit. And simultaneously, 4 news websites also got a copy of this complaint and an affidavit, and they simultaneously released this story on Saturday morning. Following which, there was a emergency, or would you say a special bench, that sat on Saturday, which was 20th of April, which was headed by Chief Justice of India Ranjan Gogoi himself, where he basically refuted all the allegations against him and went on to say that the very independence of the judiciary was under attack. Now, since then, everything has happened really quickly. The following week, an inquiry panel was set up. This was, of course, headed by Justice Bobde, who is the second in line after Chief Justice of India Gogoi, and who is also slated to be the Chief Justice later this year. Along with him on this panel were 2 other judges. One was Justice N.V. Ramana, who's number 3, and Indira Banerjee, who was a female judge of the Supreme Court. Then there are a lot of twists and turns to the story. It has been decluttered by our website in a separate episode. However, let me just take you through this very slowly once more. The complainant, she then sent a letter to the Justice Bobde panel saying that she heard about Justice Ramana being part of this panel, and she objected to it, saying that while she was posted at the Chief Justice's residence, Ramana was a frequent visitor there, and he is a close personal friend of Gogoi. After that, after this complaint also became public, it then transpired that Justice Ramana recused himself, and then he was replaced by Justice Indu Malhotra. Now, having done that, I think the panel went into top gear, if I can say that. And within 2 weeks of the allegations being made public, the inquiry has already conducted its probe, and they've closed the complaint. With, of course, the report having come out on Sunday, the 5th of May. The question on everybody's mind is whether this was hasty or not. Uh, well, there are two sides to this coin. On one hand, we do want a quick probe, but we do not want a quick probe at the expense of perhaps a equitable probe, if I can use that word, being done. And I think that's perhaps where a lot of condemnation and criticism is coming about. You can correct me if I'm wrong, or you can speak more about it. But I think that's where the whole debate has sparked, whether the hasty probe and the manner in which it was done was whether it was proper or not. We can take a few questions, but you can add.
And just to add to what Ritika said, I think this is also important. The reason this is being debated is because the complainant last week refused to participate in the proceedings of, which were being conducted by the 3 judges panel, because she felt that, she wouldn't get justice, and because the environment was slightly frightening. So now to just focus a little bit more on what the complainant has been also saying so far. In fact, just last night after, it came out officially that the CJI had been cleared of all these allegations, she also came out with a detailed press release stating that she had been shattered, dejected, and absolutely disappointed to learn that the committee felt that there was no substance, quote unquote, in her complaint. And in fact, right at the bottom, she concluded saying that she's at the verge of losing faith, in the system, or in the capacity, whether the judicial system can actually repose faith in, for the weak and the vulnerable, who actually have the courage to take on the powerful, in the country. So a little more on what the complainant, of course, has also been undergoing, Ritika, before we take some questions.
That's a pertinent question here, and of course, what you're saying is absolutely right. There seems to be that justice may have been done, because yes, there was a panel that was constituted to look into the complaint, and then they've concluded proceedings. But then the question remains whether the appearance of justice has been done. That is a very big question, and that's a very thin line that is in everybody's mind. We have a few questions that have already come in, which we'll take in one by one. I'll take this one, Anisha. Someone has asked us, Jyotika has asked us, did Justice Chandrachud meet Justice Bobde to ask for a full court meeting to look into the probe? Just to give you context and to answer that question, it appears an Indian Express report has said that Justice Chandrachud wrote a letter to the panel asking them not to continue with the proceedings since the complainant had already walked out. Again, to give you more of a background, the proceedings continued. The complainant in this matter, she participated in the proceedings. She appeared for a few sessions, and on the 3rd day of this proceedings, she walked out saying that she found the atmosphere of the committee very frightening. After which, the panel decided to continue the proceedings ex parte. They then issued a notice to Justice Gogoi, who then responded to it. And in response to that, we get back to a current question where Justice Chandrachud has likely written a letter to the panel asking them not to continue with the proceedings ex parte, since it would hurt the image of the judiciary. Do you want to take the next one, Anisha? How would a full court affect the proceedings? If you could also just...
more on that, because you've been covering it.
Sure. Okay. The panel was constituted by a full court meeting resolution. A full court resolution basically means that all the judges of the Supreme Court, sitting judges of the Supreme Court, got together and decided together to constitute this panel and to make Justice Bobde the head of this panel and to look into these proceedings. Ideally, since this is purely my opinion, if the full court meeting did constitute this panel, the report should have gone to it, but I believe it has gone to Justice Arun Mishra, who is the next senior most judge who can look into this matter, and I think he will decide whether the report will be placed before a full court or not. Anisha, I think you can take the next one. What else can the complainant do now going ahead? I think Tanisha has asked this question.
Right. In fact, we've been reporting extensively on this aspect as well. As far as the complainant herself goes, she's made it very clear, again, in her statement to the press last evening, that as far as the next course of action goes, she will consult her lawyers. So there is no development or update after that. However, some of the options or some of the various options that are being contemplated or have been mentioned by the counsels that have been representing her. In fact, I was speaking to Supreme Court senior lawyer Prashant Bhushan yesterday, and of course there are options of a criminal complaint being filed, but there is a due process that has to be followed there as well. I'm told that this particular matter would have to be quashed for a criminal complaint to be filed, because even that would have to go to the lower court. And ideally, if that goes to a lower court, even they would refer to the findings of the 3 judges panel. So it's risky to say. Another thing that she could do is challenge her dismissal, because she was suspended. She worked as a junior court assistant at the Apex Court here. So she could possibly also consider challenging her suspension order as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that has got nothing to do with the sexual harassment allegations. Challenging the dismissal would be a different point. I don't know if you...
No, that's right. We're talking about what next from here. I thought what course of action does she plan to do next? So I'm not saying that that's connected to sexual harassment. I'm looking at it in terms of what are the possible things that could be in the arraignment.
However, before all of that, I believe she should also get a copy of the report. Does she have a copy of the report? Do we know that?
As far as the press release last evening is concerned, I think the statements for the 3 times that she appeared before the 3 judges panel has already been provided to her, and she has clearly specified that there were certain corrections to be made in that, which she submitted to the Assistant Registrar of the Supreme Court last evening itself.
We'll just take a few more questions. Will the same, Aman Modi asks, will the same procedure be followed if this has happened in any other organization? Well, no. If it was any other organization, particularly a private one, then the Vishakha guidelines would kick in, and the Sexual Harassment at the Workplace Act would also kick in. Related to that, Kaif Imtiaz has also asked why Vishakha guidelines were not followed here. Anisha, do you want to take that?
Go ahead, I'll take it.
Sure.
I don't think... Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Why Vishakha was not followed here, it's actually a very technical point. We're not entirely sure since everything became public, but as per Vishakha, she should have ideally complained about this alleged sexual harassment to the in-house internal complaints committee, and that's when the process would have kicked off. Why she did not do that, we really cannot say to that, but yes, Anisha wants to add something.
Just to add to that, also as per the Vishakha guidelines, not only does the name of the complainant not become public, but also the name of the accused. Whereas in this particular case, the name of the accused has been out there in the open right from day one in her affidavit. So again, there is no specific reason. I don't think we can answer on her behalf as to why. Of course, there are various other technical aspects that have to be considered in terms of why she didn't go ahead and do that, and of course why it couldn't be followed in the time to come. And one more thing that I'd like to add, which I think is pertinent in all of this, is also that this is a time where the conversation about sexual harassment, in our workplaces has gained new momentum in India, and which is why there has been a lot of talk about how perhaps the Me Too movement in India, which gained precedence only last year in the country, has reached the highest court in land. And is it that the judicial system, is it perhaps at test, itself, given that one of its own has been accused of sexual harassment? But on the other hand, there are people saying that how can one even proceed or conclude a probe without the complainant having got a fair hearing in that matter? So I think, which is why we saw a lot of women activists, women lawyers come out and protest about it. And if we go on social media, I believe there are several protests being organized across the country, and people are actually encouraging each other to come and participate in some of those.
I believe a lot of open letters by a lot of law students, lawyers, senior advocates, civil rights advocates, a lot of those have also written. So just to wrap things up right now, this probe that was concluded on Sunday has not really answered any of our questions. If nothing more, it has posed even more questions for all of us. I'll just wrap this up, and then of course you can
Sure.
say something.
There's just one more thing which
The
I think
matter-
would like to throw light to
Sure.
conspiracy.
Yes, I was getting to that. So, like I said, the matter is not over yet. Apart from the fact that the complainant may challenge the findings of this report, we have to remember that there are various threats to this conspiracy that is not complete. There is also the matter of this affidavit filed by an advocate, Utsav Benz, who said that the complainant actually is part of a larger conspiracy to destabilize the judiciary and the Chief Justice in this large corporate conspiracy wherein disgruntled employees, or rather some corporates, have got together to destabilize and frame the CJI in order to get him to resign. And this is because there is this alleged scam, where there is cash for judgment. So there's a lot more to this. There is a retired Supreme Court Judge, A.K. Patnaik, who is slated to look into these allegations. However, Justice Patnaik, who's a retired Supreme Court Judge, was waiting for the probe to get over before he could look into this. That's it from me. I'm Ritika Jain. You could read more about all of our reporting on this issue on theprint.in, and over to you, Anisha. If you have
That's
something more
about
to
it.
say.
I think she wrapped it up. Keep watching this space for more. We will keep tracking the case and bringing you the latest updates.
Please like us.
Yes, and
Comment
share.
on us, like us, share us, tweet us, all of that and above, and read our stories. We work really hard on it.
And send
Thank you.
feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank